let's get started. I'm sure there'll still be some people coming in, but like I said, welcome to the Uplink. Today we're here with DIMO, who are doing some really cool things, supporting and scaling projects for smart infrastructure, smart buildings, etc. We've got Alex, Andy, and Yev from the DIMO team here to demonstrate and walk you through some of the stuff they're doing. So I'm going to do a quick, well, here's an agenda. I'll do that. So just a little bit about Helium, a very quick blurb about how Helium and DIMO started working together. And then I will turn it over to the DIMO guys to do intro and overview, some DIMO.zone website demo, and then we'll take Q&A for the last 10 or 15 minutes or so. And I believe Alex from DIMO might be answering some of the questions in the chat too. So if anybody types things into the chat, he can answer some of those, and we might save some for the end too. So just a quick Helium overview. Helium was founded in 2013 with a mission to make it easier to build decentralized wireless networks. And we've been able to do that by being backed by some of the best VC firms in the world. And some of those are listed below: Khosla Ventures, Google Ventures, stuff like that. So that's been awesome. And the growth, especially the last couple of years, has been really exciting. Helium is an incentive-built network. So anyone, anywhere can be rewarded for creating wireless coverage. Hosts earn HNT, both for creating coverage and when devices use their hotspot to connect to the internet. So this allows for an affordable nationwide wireless network to be rapidly built, which is really cool. So why do people choose Helium? There's a focus on applications and not network building. So it's the largest public IoT network in the world. A lot of coverage, and we're growing by the day. 65,000 plus hotspots in over 6,500 cities in 82 countries. And this gets updated again. I updated this yesterday. It's probably more than that now. I have to keep going to that page and updating those numbers every time. Network growth too. We've got over 200,000 hotspots on order. So there's going to be a lot of coverage continuing in the future. We have a diverse ecosystem of both customers and hardware makers. Really low costs associated with using the Helium network, just less than $1 per sensor per year for a device sending data every 5 minutes. And then it's just really accessible. The accessibility part is what makes this really nice. You can use the Helium network with pretty much any off-the-shelf LoRaWAN sensor. So it's very easy to get on board. Like I said, we have a diverse ecosystem of hardware makers. Some of those include Rack, Bobcat, Nebra. These get approved by the community through HIP-19, and more come on board and make it easier for people to get on the network and connect. Just some of the users of the Helium network, and again, this can be updated almost daily, weekly. We have people coming on board all the time. We've got Lone Star Tracking, Lime, Airly, Salesforce, Invisileash for pet leashes, Victor for smart mouse traps and pest control, things like that. So a lot of different really cool use cases that are being used on the Helium network. Just a little contact info. I forgot to say my name at the beginning. So I'm Jacob Swin. I'm the product marketing manager at Helium. My email is right here, just jacob@helium.com. Mark Phillips, who's our vice president of business development, he has done a lot of these uplinks in the past. So his email is there too, just mark@helium.com. And connect with us. We're on GitHub, on Twitter, follow us on social, and on Discord. I think we're at over 70,000 community members on Discord. So there's a lot of really good conversations happening, a lot of information in there. If you want to kind of follow along, be educated, talk with other community members and Helium team members as well on there. I'll put this up again at the end so people can write down emails and things like that. And just a brief overview of how DIMO and Helium work together. And DIMO guys, if you want to jump in with anything that I may have missed, go for it. So DIMO began its journey with the People's Network in 2020 with the purchase of hotspots. And then a year later, they began mapping with the Helium network with the goal of helping clients understand LoRaWAN and Long-Fi. Does that cover it a little bit, or do I need anything extra in there?
Yeah, we'll definitely fill in the details as we go along.
Perfect, sounds good. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the DIMO team to take it away.
Awesome. So I'm going to take you guys through a quick presentation, and obviously we'll have some time for questions at the end. Alex is going to be answering questions as they come in the chat, and I will try to make this as interactive as possible and show you a little bit about who we are, what we're working on, and give you a sense of what we've built and where we're headed as a company, and why we think Helium is a great piece of technology and infrastructure to build on. So just a quick overview of who we are and where we've come from. We're builders. We have experience in supply chain, telecom, robotics, Web3, and mobility. So we've touched a bunch of different domains. My background, I was previously running operations in California for a company called Transdev. We were one of the largest service providers to Waymo, running their autonomous vehicle fleet. Prior to that, I'd worked with a number of AV companies, both in the autonomous shuttle space and those integrated into large transit systems. So I have quite a bit of experience in connected mobility, autonomous mobility. Our CTO Yev is on the call. Let him and Alex kind of give a quick overview, say hi. Take it away.
All right, I'll go. Hey guys, my name is Evgeny. So I come mostly from the automotive space. I've been connecting things to the cloud for a little bit of time. So I've essentially worked on GM's automotive, deployment, which is the largest connected vehicle deployment in the world, and have done similar things at Volkswagen and Ford. Spend quite a bit of time working on, connecting autonomous vehicles to the cloud as well. So I'm a big fan of MQTT and pretty much, getting all of these things to talk to each other and getting more value out of them. And I think Helium is extremely promising because it really allows you to connect things that have never been able to, connect before, just due to cost and power requirements. And I really think this is going to just catapult, the amount of devices that are able to connect to the network, through the roof. So that's about me.
And I'm Alex. I'm also a huge fan of the Helium project. After a few years at a startup accelerator, I actually worked on connecting backup batteries and telecom networks to remote monitoring software. So very familiar with the challenges and connectivity across infrastructure, and Helium really hits home at that problem, as well as another passion. Of course, I've been in the crypto space for about 4 years now, and worked at Chainalysis, a crypto unicorn that most people have heard of in some capacity.
Cool. So we started this company about a year ago, and we like to call ourselves a product studio. We help companies connect what's possible with how that scales and becomes real infrastructure in the world. So we take our domain expertise in autonomous vehicles, telecom, electric vehicles, connected vehicles, and help companies connect the dots between these big mega trends they've heard about and the things those technologies need in order to actually start to impact people's lives and move the needle from quality of life and economic standpoint. Our goal, as we like to say at a super high level, is to reduce the time it takes for new technology to become useful infrastructure. So we've all worked at the bleeding edge, and we've seen the really magical things that can happen when new technologies are created, and we want to make it easy for everybody to share in those benefits. And oftentimes, there's 99% of the work seems like it's done when a new technology is created, but then there's a whole other challenge in getting it delivered to everyone else. And so that's what we tend to focus on when we look at new projects and when we build new products. And I'll show you one of the products that we're working on today, and we can provide access to people to be able to use it, and hopefully start a dialogue with some of the folks on the call. And I think it will become obvious why we're so excited about Helium and why we are excited to be building on it. So we work in what we call the complex project stack. So there's a ton of points where we see transaction costs get inserted into some of these huge projects out there in the world, coming from the top, whether you're a real estate developer, an enterprise client building a new warehouse or distribution center, or even a public agency. Maybe you're building a new highway, or in addition to your transit system, thinking about next generation technologies. There's typically some services firms that will step in and help you answer the question of what should you do, and they'll connect it to some large domain or maybe a new technology like automated vehicles or 5G, and help you maybe pull in kind of the get to the starting line for some new tech-enabled project. Then typically you'll need to hire another services firm, an HNTB or an IBM or an AECOM, to help you figure out how you're going to do that thing, and maybe put together some plans, hire some developers, connect to the actual endpoints, the pieces of technology, whether you're deploying a new micromobility system, you're putting robots in your factory, you're creating a digital twin of a new building, and then there's a whole bunch of resellers, integrators, industry associations that help you figure out specifically what technology you should use. And in that whole process, there's a ton of emails, PDFs, meetings, shared drives with all these documents in them. And we looked at that process and said, hey, there has to be a better way. We can create some technology that helps people sort of cut through the noise and get to the finished product and bring these new technologies into the world faster. So that's kind of the 20,000 foot view of what we look at when we come into a new project, and what new technologies like Helium are sort of up against when they're trying to get deployed, not just in a peer-to-peer sort of edge of the network kind of way, but into some of these larger industrial or enterprise projects that might have much longer time horizons and different requirements. So the first step is usually sorting through these logo boards that everybody has seen up on the web before. There's a lot of noise out there, right? So everybody has sort of had the experience of maybe encountering one of these when you're researching a new domain. And typically what we found is there's a number of companies out there that are generally lumped together that might be on totally different ends of the spectrum in terms of their readiness or their ability to be deployed into a real project in the real world. So we start from kind of first principles, and we look at these companies that are producing specific technologies and say, what are they doing in real projects out in the real world? And we start to map them together, and we've created kind of our own language. We take a very structured approach to how that works, and I'll show you what that looks like for Helium here. So hopefully you can see, so we've created, this is an interface that you can see. It gives you kind of a view into our database. These green nodes here are all the organizations we're tracking. We've created what we call a project template here for Helium, and that can also be turned into a web page where you can see all the different organizations here. And then we map them to what we call functions. So here's all the stuff that you can do with Helium technology. You can do water metering, you can do air quality monitoring, you can implement tracking for micromobility service. And then there's all these other pieces that might go into building a Helium project. And then we actually take that down to the device level. So you can see here's, in this case, I think this is an antenna that you might be able to use to increase the range of your Helium hotspot. You guys are probably all familiar with the variety of hardware that you can use to improve the earnings on your devices. So this is just a quick example at a high level of how we think about some of these complex projects, and I'll show you a couple of other examples for things not just Helium related, but real world, kind of not that Helium isn't real world, but real world infrastructure projects out there in the mobility space that we can actually surface Helium technology and potentially suggest that it becomes a part of some of these larger projects. And the first step to doing that is just increasing the awareness of Helium and kind of surfacing it when maybe one of our clients is looking for a new connectivity solution. We can say, hey, have you heard about this, 60,000 node strong LoRaWAN network out there that you can use to connect new devices to the internet? And this is awesome. This is a really great time to be working on this kind of stuff because the number of complex projects is exploding. We pulled kind of just an example. One manufacturing and distribution center for consumer goods manufacturer has 60 vendors that are all over $1 million in size, and the factory itself is well over $500 million in total spend. And all of these vendors need to be integrated together. We look at in the mobility space, there's a number of smart road projects like Cavnu that are starting to pull up, and just in this space, there's about a dozen partners that have been lined up just for one specific AV systems component of this smart road project. And so when we're looking at this, we really take the approach of kind of managing the complexity by taking this very structured and data driven approach to organizing data and keeping all of the pieces together, and that allows us to surface some really interesting insights when it comes to looking at maybe just automated delivery. Specifically, we have 5 or 6 companies just in this one project that are capable of delivering on something. We have a number of different projects that are already delivering on that specific function, and then I'll take you through some of the data at a higher level a little later on. But this is kind of an example of one of those massive complex projects that might have Helium as kind of a small component of it when there's a need down the line for, say, smart parking or some other low power battery driven use case. So we have this process where we're able to very quickly ingest, when we work with a new enterprise, we ingest a bunch of their data in both unstructured and structured formats. We merge it with our database, which basically tracks all of the different innovations out there in lots of different categories. We can take that data and use it to generate reports, templates, project designs. We have the kind of interactive visual editor that you can use to mix and match pieces and basically compose them like people are doing with smart contracts in Web3. Our vision is that people are going to be able to do that with IoT devices in a much more scalable way in the future. And then what we're really excited about and we're starting to do is incorporating real-time data. So once we create this framework for a project, we can basically breathe life into it after it comes into the real world. And that's one of the reasons we're really excited about Helium, because that kind of comes out of the box, right? Like you set up your hotspot, everything is basically open source. You can click on your device, see how it's performing, all of the sort of interfaces and reports that you need to determine the performance of your unit are there. And that's something that we spend a lot of time doing with a lot of other IoT systems that are maybe siloed into some proprietary network or hardware design. And we take all of that data, the real-time data and the structured project template and marketplace data, and we use it to enrich the DIMO platform so people can really answer the question, not just what's out there, but what is it capable of doing in my project and how has it performed in the past. And that's one of the things that we really like about Helium and why we started tracking a lot of these Helium projects is we love how open it is by design, right? So being able to see these use cases and kind of zoom in on the individual device level and the network level and say, here's how it's performing, here's the uptime of their APIs, and here's the relative performance levels. So we've started to collect these Helium projects. We'll distribute this URL around, and we really love it if people from the community would share some of the things that we're building, and I'll show you how we can take it down to the device level and to basically start to network the Helium projects that have been built out to other use cases like micromobility and parking and other smart mobility or supply chain use cases that we've already started to encounter. And we want this to be kind of a marketplace for ideas and a way for people to really highlight what it is that they're doing. So we've gone out and collected a bunch of other projects that have marketed themselves as being LoRa driven. And these are not necessarily Helium projects, but you can see Semtech is doing a smart street lighting project. There's a smart bus tracking project here. Smart roads are definitely a big area that we focus on and care a lot about. And so as we notice a lot more of these projects coming onto the market, we're going to add them here. And we have a very simple way for people to do that I'll make sure everyone on the webinar here can get. And it can be as easy as just emailing our request system, and we can add it into the site and publicize that this is happening out in the ecosystem. One of the things we really like to focus on as a company is complex and growing markets. So obviously IoT, everybody's familiar with. Another area that we focus on and go super deep in is lithium-ion batteries. So we've built out basically this is kind of just an example at a really high level of the, we call it the automaker electrification project. So you can see in the battery manufacturing world, you can take Ford's planned EV battery production all the way down into their supply chain and see what they're doing, what all the other suppliers in the battery space are doing, and you can pull up other projects in the space. So if you're interested in maybe the gigafactories that Tesla's building, you can zoom in there. If you're more interested in what a specific automaker is doing, we've built out a project specific to Ford that allows you to see the individual models they're making and where their planned US battery production is going to be built out. So that's just kind of another non-telecom, non-Helium use case of what you can use the DIMO platform for. And this is information that we provide to specific enterprise partners. And so we're capable of giving them not just this high level view, but you can zoom in really deep into the battery supply chain and say, hey, Ford is saying they're going to electrify their entire fleet by 2030 or 2035. Here's how much capacity they're going to need to be able to do that. Here's how many batteries they're going to have to source here's what the other automakers that are making similar claims are doing, and here's how those cells are actually making their way into specific vehicle devices and how those vehicles are performing. And that's something that we're kind of taking into the next generation of the DIMO platform here. So our process from end to end, really kind of combines a number of different tools and services. I kind of went through like specifically how we bring in data to the DIMO platform, so we moving from left to right here as the project gets a little bit more advanced and built out into the real world. We go through this kind of data ingesting process. We have this project formation step where we can kind of move all the pieces together and use our information about how the composability of a specific technology allows it to be compiled into a more complex project. And then once the project is actually built, that middle step allows us to, has kind of unlocked a lot of the reporting and streamlines a lot of the deliverables that go into building these complex projects, of which Helium can really be a piece of that, where we can simplify the process of setting up a new hotspot. We can build in all of the reporting and network planning tools into one of these complex projects, and then have it baked into one of these larger deployments, whether that's a new smart warehouse or a parking system. One of the other things that we really focus on, and it goes back to the complex project stack, is the procurement step is super important for a lot of these complex projects. And one of the reasons that Helium, I think, has been able to scale up so quickly is that it's really not had to encounter that for the most part in a lot of these deployments, where oftentimes procurement can take 6 to 12 months, especially if it's a new complex technology that has uncertain SLAs. And so we're really excited about the way that the network has been built out, because it's kind of solved that chicken and egg problem. And I think that's a model that is really going to continue to develop over the next couple of years as the whole Web3 mentality starts to make its way into the IoT world. So I come from a background where I was working largely in the public sector, working with transit agencies and state DOTs, and that step of the process is often the most painful and difficult from a transaction cost standpoint. Yeah, it comes from the automotive industry. Their product timelines are often 3 to 5 years when you're talking about incorporating a new technology. And so we're really trying to get ahead of that with something like Helium and have all of the information available to the stakeholders at the point when the project is being formed at the beginning. And then when it comes time to actually procure and bake in this new technology into some finished deliverable, we can have all the questions answered, which is key. So you've seen a little bit of this. We think that our data tracking process and our schema is really different for how we track things, and we think we've been able to solve a lot of the problems and develop a really comprehensive view on the real world, and also what's possible and what's out there. So we track technologies that are moving from the lab into the built world. We track established solutions and services, and we do that in real time. And we also, like I said, bring in real-time device performance. So when you're building a project on DIMO, you can take it down to the level of, in this case, an individual hotspot that we have deployed. In this case, this is about 50 feet away from me here in Providence, a new one that we set up near our home base location here. And we're starting to do this for enterprise clients in a variety of different use cases. And it's not necessarily just a Helium hotspot. I showed that example because we're here talking to you all today, but we can do that with warehouse robots, autonomous vehicles, buses and public transit systems. Really any IoT endpoint is something that we can incorporate into a DIMO project and turn it from something that's more of a template or a design into a real world, living, breathing piece of data. Like I said, we also track a lot of the commercial aspects of these projects as well. So we're super embedded into the information that needs to be surfaced during the RFI and RFP process, both for B2B transactions. So maybe a company building a new warehouse, and also public procurements, whether it's a transit agency procuring a new electric bus fleet. And then the last thing, which is kind of interesting, we've just started to attach this to our platform and some of the projects, is pulling in information about what people are capable of and what they've worked on in the past. So we all gave you a quick intro into our background, and we can also represent that in our DIMO graph here. So you have the three DIMO founders that are on the call here. You have our consulting firm and some of the things that we've done for clients in the past. And then you have a project, this automated parking project that we've been hacking on and shopping around to some enterprise clients. You can step back into the DIMO platform to see a bunch of the information about that and some of the technologies we've proposed for automated parking projects. And then you can zoom back out and see what Yev has worked on in the past. So he has this autonomous vehicle testing project that he did with Argo AI and Ford. They're running a robotaxi service. This was a really cool deployment, actually still active. And so you can get a really good sense of not just what the technologies in a project are capable of, but what the people involved in those technologies have worked on in the past. And there's a ton of data that you can load into these. This is not like a static interface by any means. You can pull in hundreds of different pieces of information about what my previous employer has worked on, whether it's an AV shuttle project or a deployment that we did of a full mobility as a service deployment in Florida. There's a ton of information we have in here that can be kind of used to build out these templates, no matter what you're actually trying to accomplish here. So don't be shy if you have any ideas about stuff that we should be tracking. Obviously, we're very specific and deep on some domains. We don't claim to have information on everything, but we do claim to be able to get information on pretty much everything that's out there. And this framework that we've built to describe projects is very flexible and capable of incorporating new information, whether that's static, unstructured data, or real-time feeds coming off of an IoT device. So we, in the vein of incorporating data about people into these IoT projects, we've built our product to focus on some very specific personas within the organizations that we work with. So typically we work very well and we work initially with innovation and business development teams to identify the kind of specific pain points or new opportunities in their market. We develop a lot of our project formation tools to work for both the IT and the solutions engineering group within a larger organization. So the folks that are actually going to be implementing and building out these technologies in the real world. And then, generally we care a lot about the decision makers at these enterprise clients. So we want to help them, feel like we're the right team to, have them build the latest and greatest with the best technologies and remove the fear of failure or the failure to innovate out of their decision-making process when they're considering a new investment. That's super important and something that generally creeps into a project whenever everybody kind of the initial excitement of doing something new wears off. People say, maybe I should go back to the last generation technology, and that's where we generally push people into the future, and we can be really helpful. So we've designed our platform, and you've seen a couple of the apps we've built. Fortunately, we can't share everything. A lot of the stuff we work on is siloed within, or not siloed, but basically protected private data. So there's a bunch of apps that we've built out for specific clients and some use cases that we've been able to address with the foundation, which is our graph database technology and the way that we basically overlay our schema on top of it to describe projects. And some of the examples are project management tools. We don't claim to be a replacement for Jira or some of the other project management tools out there, but we do integrate with them very well. So you can take a project that you've kind of put together in DIMO, and you can easily take that data and export it into a Jira board or whatever other project management tool that you might be using on a specific project. We also have worked with simulations quite a bit. So taking the data from DIMO and using it to populate a simulation so you can predict what a specific operation is going to do before you actually put it out there. We've also worked with quite a few of the network planning tools that are available to people on the Helium network, so you can figure out the best place to put your hotspot, where you're going to get the best coverage, and what that means for the downstream operations and how you're actually using the network when you operationalize something on top of it. And then something that Yev is super excited about is the ability to take the software components of what we're building and push them into CloudFormation templates. So you can build a project in DIMO, say, I want this warehouse robotic system to integrate with this conveyor system, and this is the network it's going to use, and here's how we're going to one-click spin up an AWS environment to support that entire project. We think there's a massive amount of potential for that type of integration down the line, especially as many of our enterprise customers continue to push more into cloud and hybrid cloud environments. We've seen a lot of uptake and demand for that type of service, and it's something we're really excited about. And then, one thing I skipped over, and it might be relevant, and we've seen a number of Helium projects kind of start to creep into the public sector and interact with folks that need to have very structured and by the book for procurement processes. Is we can very easily take a project that's been built in DIMO and generate proposals out of it. So if you're thinking about working with, say, a university or maybe a state DOT or a local transit agency or city, oftentimes they have very structured procurement processes, and we can help first off strategize around that if your project has a specific need, if maybe you're a little bit more on the technical side and need some help actually putting the project together and crossing all the T's and dotting the I's, and that's something that we have a lot of experience with in our team, and our solution can be quite helpful for. So there's a number of different ways to get involved here. You can go to dimo.zone and make an account. Our website is definitely in public beta mode at this point. We've been super focused on making it very useful for some of our enterprise clients, and we're starting to get to the point where we're sharing more of our data and building more of a community around the project itself. We're in the next couple of weeks rolling out, you can see it on the site today, and we'll be rolling out more of a newsfeed type of functionality. So if you're following one of the devices or projects on our site, you'll be able to, within the next couple of weeks, log in and see updates and changes and get alerts about maybe how that device or project or organization is changing, and maybe they've rolled out a new deployment in a specific area, or there's some news event or funding event related to that. Whenever we see relevant information, we pull it into our database. We have a whole data services team behind what we do that supports a lot of our market intelligence and business strategy type of operations, and so that information can also make its way out into the public. We also have a somewhat active Discord, not anywhere near what's going on in the Helium Discord over there, but we hang out and we're in Discord pretty much all the time. We're super accessible and interested in hearing any ideas that anybody has, especially as it relates to things that you might want to track using our platform. So we call it curation. We track a number of kind of high level categories, and I can sort of step in and show you what those are today. And we're also looking for data scientists and industry analysts to be able to kind of help us build out some of those categories a little bit more. And on the data science side, we're, like I said, starting to incorporate a lot more real-time data feeds into our operation. And so that takes the level of complexity up quite a bit. And it's really something that is a big focus for us over the next couple of weeks. The easiest way to send us a new thing, if you'd like us to track it, is just use this email address here, request@dimo.zone, creates a ticket for us. We can respond and send you a link once it's up on the site. And you can also hire us. We build lots of IoT projects for different types of clients. We also do the easiest way that we typically get involved with new enterprise clients or partnerships is by doing this kind of deep dive market intelligence and strategy type of projects where we can go really deep and provide some useful kind of long-term structured information about any domain. The battery example I shared before is a great example of maybe one of the biggest markets out there these days, and certainly the fastest growing. And obviously, telecom in the 5G space is something that we're going to continue to monitor, especially as Helium starts to build out some 5G small cells and really take that world to the next level. So I think that's about it. We have some contact information here. You can always reach out or join our Discord. The easiest way to get all that information is to jump into our site. And maybe we'll just take a couple of questions. Alex, do you think there's anything I should dive into based on what's going on in the chat?
I've been replying to a few questions, but let me see if there's some that we makes sense to dive into a little bit more detail on.
Cool. And then, like I said, this is we call them root projects, and basically it's like a category. So everything under these root projects basically rolls up to it, and we're in the process really kind of re-architecting how we do things behind the scenes. So this information is going to be really useful. If you're interested in automated mobility, you can kind of navigate here. There'll be a bunch of stuff. I guarantee you'll find something that you haven't seen before, and you can click through and see all of the organizations that we're tracking in that particular space. A lot of brand names, a lot of startups you might not have heard of. And once you make an account, you can always go in and pop open that graph visualizer and click around. It's not the most user intuitive thing these days, but we're making it better. And so in the case of like this cruise company, for example, they're a big name in the automated vehicle space. If you want to, figure out who else is, providing or doing these types of, structured testing for vehicle automation systems, you can go in and pull up a bunch of other data and build out one of these graphs. Like I said, the blue nodes here are specific projects that are out there in the space. So that's kind of the easiest way to click around and figure out who's doing what in a particular domain you might care about. So really interested to get some feedback from the community here. We've already had some awesome people from Helium jump in and say hi since they published the blog post. And yeah, this is a new thing for us. So we're excited to become a little bit more of a consumer facing company and get some feedback from that part of the market. And of course, if there's anybody out there with a huge enterprise innovation budget, we can always help you spend that more efficiently too.
Awesome. Thank you. Alex, did you see anything you wanted to dive into? I can ask a couple questions if you don't have anything out of there.
I think that there's a handful of questions for kind of the Helium team versus more for DIMO focused questions. So yeah, Jacob, if you have anything, that's probably a good place to start.
Okay. Well, I know McKenna has put this in the chat a few times, but any questions like specifically for Helium, you can absolutely go to our Discord community, and there's a lot of chatter in there. You can talk to Helium members, you can talk to the community about those types of things. I had a couple questions just for the DIMO guys. Let me, I mean, you talked a little bit about this, but kind of where do you see DIMO going and just kind of the future of what you're working on right now with like smart cities and stuff? I mean, I live somewhere in Oregon, which is a like rapidly growing community, and with a lot of people coming from like, the Bay Area kind of techie places moving up here. And I think it would be something that this town would be really interested in. I'm just curious, like, how do you see the growth of those types of things going, and what's DIMO looking at with that?
So there's we primarily work in the B2B space right now, but and I think and it's very uneven, the adoption of a new IoT technology or maybe the level of automation that you might find in a specific industry. And the same way that's the case, it also kind of transfers over to the public sector as well. So a lot of the things that people experience on a day-to-day basis, like the roads in your city, or the street lights, the transit system, maybe if you're in a larger city, those things are kind of unevenly adopting new IoT and networking technologies. A lot of it's driven by the availability of just access to telecom services. And so we've seen over the last year, depending on what business line or what vertical you're in, a real kind of upswing in certain areas, and then other areas people are kind of unsure about whether they should invest in the next generation technology, or whether they're still kind of digesting the flip phone from 15 years ago.
Yeah.
But certainly in the supply chain space and in warehousing and logistics, there's a tremendous amount of innovation happening. I mean, some of the factories that we've been to visit in the last couple of months are really mind-blowing in terms of the level of automation and the complexity and the thought that goes into what's being built there. And some of our clients in this space, they are really pushing the bleeding edge in terms of adopting robotics. And it's not in a necessarily just like replacing humans one for one sort of way that you might expect. It's a tremendous amount of on the ground intelligence and like kind of next generation labor and like workforce development that needs to happen in order for that to be really rolled out at scale. And so in a lot of cases, the limiting factor and what we see, and kind of one of our main sort of thesis points is like it's not just like developing this new technology in a lab that gets it to change people's lives. There's a huge gap between say, building a robotaxi and having a fully automated robotaxi trip happen in New York City or San Francisco or Oregon.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot. I think the story of the next couple of decades is going to be transitioning some of those technologies into pieces of infrastructure.
Yeah, no, that's super cool. That's really exciting too, to think about that stuff. You mentioned like just some helium projects you guys have seen, excuse me, or have worked with and stuff like that. Do you guys have any specific like favorite helium projects that you've seen, things that helium has done that really jumped out to you?
I love the parking sensor project that was done. I think it was in Huntington. Is in the LA area for sure, and it was with a city, and that was really impressive to me. And it kind of speaks to the relationship that Nobel has with their client in that case. And I've been a part of a lot of public sector projects where we're using innovative technology, and it does take really committed stakeholders on the public sector side in order to make that happen. And oftentimes you have to get creative as far as your funding model and what you're using as a success criteria, and that's really where I think the needle starts to move, not in terms of like the development of the technology, but its adoption. So if you can unlock these new business models for, say, using LoRaWAN in a public setting, using the public right of way, using maybe the street light to get your hotspot to provide connectivity to a variety of devices, that's when you really start to see significant investment happen. And so anything that touches the public sector, maybe large enterprise clients, is super interesting to us, because that's where we've been really focusing on trying to help adoption. And I have a dog, so I'm about to put one of those dog trackers on my dog. I've been building out a network in my neighborhood, and
Nice.
So it's a combination of like stuff that can sort of like blow your mind in terms of its potential for like really large scale adoption, and then the super local stuff that you can just do on your own without asking anybody. And I think the interplay between those two is really great.
Awesome. Alex, I don't know if you're responding in the chat right now, but we can read this one from Andrew in the chat out loud and go for it.
Yeah, it's a great one to reply to.
Okay, yeah, you go for it. Read it out loud and you can answer it in there.
Sure. Are you tracking use of other technologies and standards like Kafka and Pulsar, Neo4j versus dgraph? There's a question about what kind of graph database we're using. And then also, what about data modeling and semantic interoperability standards, Matter versus Open Connectivity Foundation? So a lot about sort of the composability of software. Yeah, that's something we think a lot about, Andy.
I'm giving that one to Yev. I know Yev's excited.
Yeah. So this is something that we're getting into now. So this is something that we have done with clients, right? When you start building out the project, you have to make some technology decisions based on what you're going to be using. And we're starting to go one level down from the product into what are the components of each product. And this is where these kind of questions comes up, right? Is whether it's Kafka streaming or Pulsar streaming with its specific abilities versus graph databases, and your budget comes into play, whether you want to use the open source version or the fully paid one. This is something that we are currently not tracking publicly. We want to get into this over time, right? So my personal goal, right, is this world where there's a digital twin for everything, and I can literally, just as a single person business, go and order 4 of these validated devices, click a button, and get all these device twins talking to each other in a full complete deployment. And obviously, there'll be some examples that are built probably with Kafka and some that are built with Pulsar. And, I'm hoping that the Neo4j and the dgraph one kind of disappears and we just move to Web3, and, the graph project is, providing that backend functionality. But this is something that we have done for clients more so on a project basis. But I do want to, as time permits and as our company grows, to, start really going down to this level in terms of live projects and why did they pick that technology and how they're using it.
Yeah, Andrew, it sounds like we got to talk, man. We are building with dgraph, and we're kind of migrating this this current model that we've built over to these next generation graph databases, and it's been a really fascinating thing. Usually we tend to like get our hands dirty with something and then start to open it up after we really understand the ecosystem and what pieces go where. And this is one of the most exciting things on the software side that we're doing today.
Awesome. I think we have time for maybe one more question if anyone in the chat has one. Maybe not. Not sure. So let me 1 second pull up. All right. Just the contact info for Helium one more time. One thing in the chat. So thank you to the guys from DIMO. Yeah, Andrew, Alex, that was really cool. That was awesome. Alex, nice work answering questions in the chat. That's super helpful. Here is, remember, email for me, just jacob@helium.com, mark@helium.com for biz dev, Twitter, GitHub, Discord, all of that. And be sure to follow everything that DIMO and Helium are doing. Awesome. Thank you guys. Appreciate you being on here.
Cool.
All
Thank
right.
you.